Wisdom Keepers. That's a new program on NET PBS. And the executive producer is Dr. Bill Baker, an old friend of Personally Speaking, who we're delighted to welcome back to our program today. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr. Jim Lisante, and Dr. Bill Baker joins me now. Bill directs the Bernard L. Schwartz Center for Media, Public Policy, and Education at the Graduate School of Education, Fordham University. He's also the President Emeritus of WNET-13, New York's public television station and America's flagship public broadcaster, where he served a 21-year tenure. As a commercial broadcaster, Bill helped start many cable networks, helped launch Oprah Winfrey as a talk show host, and was involved in the early stages of launching both the Discovery Channel and the Disney Channel. Bill Baker is the recipient of 7 Emmy Awards, and he's believed to be the 8th person in history to have stood on both the North and South Poles. He's also a lighthouse keeper at Henry Island, Canada. Bill is the executive producer of a new PBS series called Wisdom Keepers, which explores the relationship between faith and the world we live in. Bill is married to his wife, Jean Marie, and together they're the parents of 2 adult daughters. He's here with us today to talk about his life, his career, his family, his new series, and the Catholic faith and values that mean the most to him. Joining us now, I'm so pleased to welcome back to Personally Speaking our friend, Dr. Bill Baker. Dr. Bill Baker, thanks for coming back and Personally Speaking. You know, yesterday at my 10:30 Mass, a young man comes up to me, a guy named Matthew, and he says, you know, I know you're always talking about things in TV and movies, and you have got to see this thing called Wisdom Keepers. He said, I think it's one of the best things I've seen in a long time. He said, oddly enough, tomorrow, one of the executive producers is coming on, Dr. Bill Baker. So a guy like that who likes things like this, I was glad to hear such a positive response. But when you got involved in making this thing, what did you want your target audience to be?
Well, first, Monsignor, it is such a joy to see you again and be back with you. You're one of my absolute favorites, and one of the best priests that's ever been involved in media in my long career. So thank you again, and if we have time at the end, again, I want to repeat my something that you know, which was the highlight of my media career, when somebody once asked me what it was, and and you're involved, and we'll talk about it. You may have even forgotten, but we'll talk about that later. But let me answer your question. As many people who have heard of me, you know, I've had a long career in media, 20 or 30 years in commercial media, dating back to, you know, being involved in starting Oprah's career and being a producer and then being a manager and then president of Westinghouse Television and all their cable companies. And then going into public television, where I thought I'd be for a couple of years, and wound up being there for 20 years running public television in New York. And then now for the last decade, I've been a professor. I'm based at Fordham University. Fordham has been very kind to me, and I pretty much allowed me to do whatever I wanted. And one of the things I've been doing at this center I run at Fordham is either make movies or write books on the subject of media or management. And the last movie I made, which may be my last, I don't know, but if it is, I'm very proud of it, is the one you just talked about. Made with a lot help from a lot of friends. 5 years ago, came up with this idea of wisdom keepers. Like, you know, when you're my age, it's kind of like, what the heck is this all about? You know, where are we going? What's life about? And you see, especially society struggling so much and fractured, etc. What is going on and what is important? I'm not tired of, but I don't think I can add to a political discourse, and I'm not good at that and don't want to do a political discourse. But I'd like to do a discourse of thoughtful people who are really deeply thoughtful, mostly winding up being people who've studied philosophy, theology, etc., for their whole lives. And what conclusions have the scientists? What conclusions have they come to? Kind of, what is the meaning of life? What are we here for? Can we have a better life? Where have we gone wrong, etc.? Because it's clear we have gone wrong. And so I've been thinking about that, and we even had some scholars that we hired at Fordham, and they have some deep scholarship there themselves. Of who are some of the best people to talk about this stuff. So it took me years, total really of 5 years, because we had to raise money, we had to go out and talk to these people, we had to persuade people that we didn't know, because a lot of these people are not, they're searchers, often authors, but they're not people out self-aggrandizing or self-promoting. So they don't even want to be on TV. They like to write, they like to think. Many of them are people like you, people of the cloth, and but we've located a lot of them, and the ones that we could get, and the ones that were hard to get, like Richard Rohr, who's a very famous Catholic monk in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It took me 5 years to get him. Among other things, COVID came in and he got sick, and this and that and the other. At any rate, when he came back to life, more or less, because everybody thought he was dying, he said, "I'll talk to Baker." So we had to go out there and shoot in Albuquerque. At any rate, we found these people that I think are truly profound, and of all faiths, and some people not particularly of faith, but of deep thinking. But most all of them are people of faith, and ask them kind of the same questions, which is, what's it all about, and what's life all about? Then it was like, who should do this? Well, the best person to do this would be you, but you weren't available, and also I didn't really want a priest, a rabbi, whatever. I wanted more of a journalist. And the other person I thought would be me, but when I thought about that, I thought, I'm too old for this work. People are going to look at this old guy and think, he's working on his obit. And so I decided that the best person I knew, who was a journalist whom I had worked with, was Ray Suarez. Ray he had hosted for a short time the NewsHour. He's a journalist. He's been all over the world. He's a very thoughtful guy, amazingly thoughtful. His daughter is an Episcopal priest, and she's one of the priests at St. John the Divine in New York, that big, huge cathedral. So I asked him to do it. Then it was like, hey, we want this to really be something. We want these interviews to look of the quality of theatrical movies, because maybe they should be seen in movie theaters and discussed. Maybe we should do that together, not just like a news thing with a camera person with a camera on his or her shoulder shooting, 60 seconds worth of something. So to film at that scale, kind of theatrical movie scale, lots of lighting and this and that and the other, and really good cameras and multiple cameras, took a lot of money. So I had to do what I used to do, which is raise the money, which isn't particularly easy. We were talking about that before this recording started, but we did. Friends at PBS put in a little bit to help it along, and it is. And we made 8 one-hour films. And the first one ran on WNET on June 9th. And the second one is running, although this won't be on the air in time to promote that, on WLIW in Long Island, this coming Thursday after this taping. So, and then at 7 o'clock on that Thursday. And then, so it's run in prime time, and it's run nationwide. But most important, we can talk about this because this thing is available online on pbs.org streaming. And it's really better streaming anyway than broadcast for the simple reason, 7 o'clock on Thursday comes and, oh, it's Wisdom Keepers. Well, I just had a bad pizza. I don't feel like thinking about the meaning of life. And so this way, when you say, I'm feeling good, but I'm thinking, what's it all about? Let's go to pbs.org, look up Wisdom Keepers, and there are 8 of them. And I'd look at them more or less in order. The first one on, I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but
That's
you invited
okay.
me
You're
on your
great,
show. The first one is kind of a little mixture of everything. So we have Reverend A.R. Bernard. Now, you've never heard of him, probably. You're one of the most important men of the cloth in the New York Metro. Never heard of, no, either had I. And I found him because the Jewish community, head of the Jewish community, one of the top people that I use to find the best rabbis, said, got somebody better than one of our rabbis. And this guy's a Baptist priest, a Baptist minister in, I think, Brooklyn, who has the biggest church in New York. 40,000 people. He has 40,000 church members. And so A.R. Bernard is really amazing. So we got him. We got Kelly Brown Douglas, Reverend Kelly Brown Douglas, a distinguished Episcopal priest from the Union Theological Seminary, a theologian. We have Kwame Anthony Appiah, who's a college professor, a philosopher, a big-time guy. And Rachel Timoner, who is a rabbi from Brooklyn, and she is really something and very profound, relatively young woman.
Second, Bill. Let me stop you for a second to ask. Let's go back to the concept of wisdom for a second.
Okay, sure.
King Solomon is considered this great wise king because he had not just intelligence and ability to decipher things intellectually, but because he also was someone with a compassionate heart who understood human nature. I mention that because you've mentioned people on the program who are very intellectual, who are very great in terms of philosophy, theology. But did you pick these people that are interviewed also with an eye to how much compassion and insight into the human heart do these speakers have? What did you discover about the people you had on the program?
Monsignor, you hit it very well, and you're absolutely right. Let me rephrase it in the way I was thinking when we were looking for people. We were looking for people who were what I call the real thing. People who are not either phony promoters selling something, but people who others viewed and who as really genuine and not out for any reason other than really trying to do the right thing and to enrich themselves with knowledge and enrich the world. So that was really our selection process. And of course, they had to be articulate.
Right.
Turns out that, and also they were all very literate, many of them. Richard Rohr, for example, our Catholic on our first one, who is really half of the show. This monk lives in New Mexico. He has written 40 books. And he is really profound. He has a big following online, and he's a truly humble and wonderful. By the way, none of these people are rich. None of them are making any money. They're all, Rohr, you think, well, he wrote 40 books. He's done well. He's sold millions of books, but he gives all the money to the Franciscans. These are all the real thing. And
I like that definition.
And that made me feel good too, because you feel in the presence of God. You feel privileged to be around people like that, because we would hope there'd be many of them, and there may be, but I haven't met many in my life. Yes.
But it's great that you found the ones. Dr. Bill Baker's our guest. Bill, one of the wisdom seekers and keepers that throughout my adult life I've enjoyed is someone you introduced me to. And I just wondered, especially with his passing, what because he was both friend and co-worker to you, and you gave him many opportunities in media. Your feeling about the passing of Bill Moyers and what he meant to the whole concept of wisdom.
Yeah, well, Moyers was not only a concept of wisdom, but a concept of journalism and truth.
Mm,
Bill and I worked together since 1987. We were close friends, I guess, in some respects. Technically, I was his boss because, but not really. Nobody could be his boss. Oh, by the way, a cute Bill Moyers story. I told my wife just yesterday, she was saying grace at the table, and I said, can't hear you. And I said, oh, that reminds me of Bill Moyers, what he did. He was, Lyndon Johnson was at one of those big dinners, and he asked Moyers to say grace, and Moyers started grace, and Lyndon said, President Johnson said, hey, Bill, I can't hear you, you're mumbling. And he said, well, Mr. President, I wasn't speaking to you.
which Johnson would need to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But at any rate, Moyers was, again, one of those really, truly authentic people. And nothing meant more to him than seeking the truth. So you had to let him do that, in the way at least we managed, if anybody managed him, was to give him his head and to say, he was going to do the right thing because what he was after was the truth. And in many ways, this program is in his image
Right.
because this is the 21st century version or the 2025 version of Joseph Campbell. I never forgot when he came to me all excited saying, well, we're doing this 5-part series with Joseph Campbell. Isn't that fantastic? I said, yeah, that's great, Bill. I said, but who's Joseph Campbell? He said, oh, you'll love it. Well, and I was really kind of scared because I couldn't picture 5 hours of somebody I'd never heard of. But as you know, it went totally through the roof. It would be nice if, not for any reasons of happiness, of success, professional success, but that if the message of this program and the people on this program got out at the scale of Joseph Campbell, because there's a lot that needs to be said right now, particularly in such a fragmented world.
Dr. Bill Baker's argues, let's go back in years because it involves your friend Bill Moyers again. But so it's 9/11. We're in the studio. You have an imam, a rabbi, and me talking about where do we find hope. Since 9/11, Bill, it hasn't gotten a whole lot better in this world, if anything, more complex.
Right.
In light of that, again, going back to the program, are all these religions, good as they are in seeking God, in the end, from your perspective, are they more problem than solution in terms of bringing our world together?
I'd like to talk about that program because it was an important program. And I will answer your question immediately by saying no. I think having various religions is a good thing. I don't think they're a problem. I think they're the salvation. Everybody sees things differently. There are different doors that get you to God, and that's just fine. Just as long as we don't dislike the other people coming out of those doors. I think having multiple religions, multiple approaches, multiple human personalities, all of that is good, not bad. I don't want to be a cookie cutter. That program that you just referred to that we broadcast, a lot of people these days weren't even alive then, but on 9/12, the day after, it was actually Bill Moyers' idea to go on the air, and he said, the commercial broadcasters are doing a fabulous job, and they were covering this as a news story. What can we do as public service media do to help? Well, the one was thought of by one of our people on our staff at WNET, which was, hey, we have all these kids out there, their parents are totally panicked. All you see on TV is smoke coming out of the World Trade Center, the buildings falling down. why don't we put on our best kids shows we can? Just one channel, one of our sub channels, all kids shows, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, etc. I called Fred Rogers, by the way, and said, Fred, can you go on and talk about this? Do you have any answers? And he said, Bill, I don't have any answers. He said, I don't know what to do. So let's just put the shows on. Just so kids could go to a, quote, safe place. And actually, again, it was really Moyer's idea. He said, let's get the biggest thinkers we can from religion and see if they can add anything. We can't cover this as a news story, but we can cover it as a profound event in our society. And let's get, so Bill Moyers and I, as you know, interviewed you 4 or 5 people representing different major faiths. And I was really happy that you were one because you were my friend, on top of everything else. So I never forgot, we got to the rabbi and Bill said, well, what do you think we should do right now as a man of faith? And he said, well, our religion's very clear, an eye for an eye. I never forgot that. I was, and everybody kind of, no. Then we got to you, and I never forgot you swallowed like the biggest swallow I ever saw. And you said, well, our faith says forgiveness. And I thought, holy Christmas, and I thought that was so deep and profound and represented so much courage at that time when nobody wanted to forgive anybody. We just wanted to get him, And I thought, but it is so right. And to me, and I often mention that time, as for me, that was and we had millions and millions of people watching because there was nothing to watch other than our show or the tragedy of the moment visualized on news, that it was one of the greatest moments in a long media career for me. And I'll never forget that. And you were obviously the main feature of that. So I think about that often, and I think about our faith and using our faith at especially the most important times of life. So that's it. Yeah.
No, Bill, it's interesting. Around the same time, I went on a commercial station, a news station, and said something similar about, well, Jesus demands forgiveness, not 7 times, but 70 times, 7 times. And that was not what they wanted to hear.
No, that didn't go down well, I'm sure.
And
even in public TV, it didn't go down too well.
And the guy who was the host said, okay, we're going to be back with Monsignor in just a moment. And that was it. I was gone in a heartbeat. So thank you for letting me stay on. Let me ask one final question. Dr. Bill Baker is our guest, and I hope that Wisdom Keepers will be something everyone watches both online and as well as on television. But Jane Goodall, that wonderful, wonderful, insightful lady, is 90 years old now and recently was asked, at 90, what keeps you going? And she said, the next big adventure. And they said, well, what project is that? She said, no, I'm 90. The next big adventure is my death and then the glory of eternal life. and I'm just wondering, because you referred several times during this interview to the aging process and none of us are getting younger. When you look ahead to that next, hopefully, glorious chapter, are you frightened of death, Bill, or do you welcome it in terms of where it leads?
Well, no, I'm not frightened of death. And that's, of course, a big advantage of having faith. I don't have any idea about where it goes next, but I am not frightened of it. I've had, and this is a whole other show, so I'm not going to get into it, but I've had 4 near-death experiences. I mean, right where, like the last one was 3 years ago when I had a massive heart attack and I had 13% chance of living. But and all different, so heart attack, this, that, and the others that falling in a crevasse in Antarctica and all this. But again, and you would think after you've had all these near-death experiences, you really would have a profound view of life. And I don't. I really don't. I still worry about the same junk I've always worried about. But I don't have any fear, and I didn't then, and I don't now, because I really do believe God has something there for us. And again, if I am a decent person and try to do my best, that's all. It's a low bar, and I think he's accepting of that, or she, and so that's my answer.
Yeah. And I love that reference to he or she. And some of my listeners get nervous. But I remember John Paul I, for only his 1 month pontificate, said, when we pray the Our Father, we're kind of missing the point in that if God is all goodness and all love, then he'd have to be both mother and father to us. So
Yes.
the multi-dimension aspect of God. But and if you get there ahead of time, Bill, to the kingdom, please do send a signal so I can know that I'm certainly in the right field doing this work. I want to thank Dr. Bill Baker for being honest. And Bill, one last time for our
Yes.
listeners and viewers, to watch the program about wisdom, which is so key to all of our lives. Where do they go? How do they find it? What's the best way to be in touch with this beautiful insight that you're giving to all of us? How do we do it?
Yeah. So there are about 8 programs. The best one to start with is the first one, which is Finding Meaning in a Divided World. And that's the one that Rohr is on,
Yeah.
Father Richard Rohr. You go to pbs.org and you just search for Wisdom Keepers, and it's all free. So to get, you have to have a pbs.org app, or you can get it on your phone, and there it is. And there are 7 or 8 to choose from. The second one is a really interesting one too. Dr. Francis Collins, who is the former head of the NIH and the man that uncoded the genome, the human genome, and so he's a luminary physician who's also a man of deep faith, so that's the way. PBS.org, Wisdom Keepers. Boom, there it is. If not, give me a call and we'll get you. I'll send you a link.
I thank Dr. Bill Baker for being with us. I love this man for many, many reasons. He's a giant of the media industry, a great writer. I love one of the best things that Bill has written is Leading with Kindness. And Bill, that was a great name for a great book that you wrote, but it's also in so many ways a definition of what you do. You lead with kindness, insight, compassion, all those things that we're called to. When you say, just live a decent life, man, you've far surpassed that. And I'm just so proud to know you and consider you a friend. And thank you for sharing your insights with us on Personally Speaking.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You can see us on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. So much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.